Get started as everyone's still entering, but we're just going to be prompt and start right on the hour here. I'm Becky King from Wellesley Career Education, and I'm joined by my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Dana Keep.
And we just wanted to start off today by saying you've probably heard first impressions last, or you only get one chance to make a first impression. Maybe you're starting a new leadership role, or you're interviewing for a leadership position, or maybe you're onboarding at a new job. How do you communicate from a place of authority, establish rapport within your team, navigate cross-functional politics, and build relationships with external stakeholders? Well, we're fortunate today to be joined by Maya Dolgin, ICF-credentialed coach, trainer, and facilitator who helps executives and rising leaders bring out their best at work. She specializes in supporting individuals who are starting or seeking new leadership roles and organizations that are struggling with COVID-related communications challenges. Thank you so much for joining us today, Maya, and I will pass the baton to you.
Fabulous. Becky, thank you so much. And Dana, it's been really wonderful working with you both on planning this, and I appreciate the chance to give something back to my wonderful alma mater. I am class of 2010. I purple class. For those of you who are also purple class, I'll take the opportunity to invite all of you to also rename yourself on Zoom. If you are not sure where to do that, you can go over to your name and there's a little blue box with more, and then you can click on the little caret and rename. You're welcome to put in your pronouns if you would like to, and your class here as well, as I did, and you can see that as an example. And I'm really happy to be here with all of you. I do hope that today you will feel comfortable participating, both by taking yourself off of mute and by typing in the chat. Let's have it be active. And also for those of you who want to sit back and listen, that's good too. There will be a lot of opportunities to participate, to bring examples, to ask questions. Let's make this as inclusive and participatory as you all want it to be, and certainly as I would like it to be. So today, like Becky said, we're going to be talking about projecting leadership with intention from day one. But before we get started, I would like to invite everyone to type into the chat. We're going to have our first little way of connecting with one another. You're going to type into the chat your class year, if you didn't put it into your name, what's on your feet, and what are your feet on? Okay, so as an example, I would write 2010 socks, wood. Okay, let's get a sense of where everyone is, where you're at. We'll feel comfortable. If we were all in the same room, we would know what's on each other's feet. And I love seeing, let's see, I'm going to give it a second to, as I see a lot of answers are already coming in. You can see office carpeting, metal, wood floor, couch. Yes, love whoever's feet are up on a couch right now, propped on the base of a stool. Sandals, hiking boots, shoes, slippers. I have yet, in any of my 2 years of asking this question, seen someone write high heels in their answer here. I would be supportive if someone was wearing high heels. I'm also happy so many people are in slippers and feeling relaxed and comfortable while we're all together. So I'm going to share my slides, and projecting leadership with intention from day one. It's a heavy title, a lot of big words in this title. And I think that if there were any word that I really want, that I would say is the focus that I'm bringing here, I'm going to say that it's about intention. Projecting leadership with intention is about making a choice, or at any given moment making a choice. And it's a wonderful thing. In the coaching course that I did it in a setting that's based on Alfred Adler's psychology. It's Adlerian coaching, and choice is a real emphasis in that work, and something that I take with me in my work with my clients. And I want to start with a caveat. I'm actually going to start with two caveats. Being the Wellesley woman that I am, I will not make broad generalizations without offering any kind of a caveat. And so my first caveat is this. And I'm also breaking my first rule as a public speaking coach, which is don't have a lot of text on the screen. So here, I'm putting a lot of text on the screen because this quote is so important that I want you to see it all in full. If you try to use human influence strategies and tactics of how to get other people to do what I want, or if I try to get people to do what I want, to work better, to be more motivated, to like me and each other, while my character is marked by duplicity and insincerity, then in the long run, I cannot be successful. It simply makes no difference how good the rhetoric is, or even how good the intentions are. If there's little or no trust, there's no foundation for permanent success. Only basic goodness gives life to technique. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Maya, isn't this about projecting leadership? Aren't you going to teach me how to project leadership? Yes, but I connect very strongly with this quote by Stephen Covey. And if you haven't read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's my first book recommendation to all of you. Hopefully there will be many more. My clients know that I give lots of book recommendations. I love that Covey puts a focus on needing to align the inner work with that outer work. And I'll say for myself, I came to this work from a place of leadership development. When I graduated from Wellesley, I went into leadership development for the first few years of my career full time. And then in my next job out of college, I was working in a role that involved me doing public speaking training with people. So I went from doing that, who am I, big leader, big questions about leadership, to helping people really articulate very clearly and concisely their messages in order to be able to make an impact and achieve their goals. And I found that when I decided it was time for me to head out into the world and start my own business, I couldn't only be focusing on this question of what kind of leadership do I choose to project, without also helping my clients be able to answer that question, what kind of leader am I, or what kind of leader do I aspire to be, depending on the situation. I think all my work that I do with my clients is somewhere along this arrow. Today, specifically, we are focusing on the second piece, but it feels important to me to acknowledge that it is a part of a journey, and that work of doing that alignment is an important element here, because like he says, insincerity, I don't imagine there's any duplicity on this webinar right now, but certainly a feeling of, am I really what I say I am? It's okay to be stepping into that. It's okay to be making movement towards making that alignment. And I welcome you all here today as part of that process. So whether you are here on your journey, or if you're here on your journey, if you have a clear picture of what kind of leader you are, or if you have a clear picture, if you are still thinking about it, in either case, it's good to be focused on that external work, as long as it's in the context of the internal work as well. So today, because of time, we are focusing on the second question. And I'm going to offer a second caveat before we dive in. And that second caveat is, wrong direction. Another page from Stephen Covey. Management is doing things right, and leadership is doing the right things. He attributes this quote to a few other men who came before him. I don't have to name all the men who said all the quotes back in the day, but it's important for me to also mention this because you all came to this webinar today with the hopes of learning something. In a minute, I'm going to ask everyone to share and tell us what it is that brings you. But you don't need a fancy title to be a leader. You don't need a parking spot or fancy clothing. It's about making those choices to do the right things. And it is plural. There are a lot of things that are the right things. And I want everyone who's on this call to feel like whatever position you're in or whatever position you're applying for, you can be a leader in any of them. You can be a leader no matter whether you are in the C-suite or not. So, going in the wrong direction. Context and goal. You're all here with something in mind. Something brought you, something attracted you to the session. And I would love to get a sense of what it is. We put in the blurb a few different things, whether you recently got a promotion or you started a new position or you're applying for new positions or otherwise. And also the second question of what it is that you're hoping to be able to be projecting leadership in. What are the goals? Is it about establishing rapport with your team? Is it about navigating cross-cultural politics within your organization? Is it about having external stakeholders? You're meeting you have new clients or new accounts that you're working with, or whatever it is. Who are the people that you are looking to indicate to them that you are, whatever it might be, that you're in control, that you know what's going on, that you are, setting strategy, insightful, whatever it might be. So I'm gonna put up here on the screen this question. There's a thing called Menti. I'll also put it into the chat for those of you who, menti.com. You can all go to the website. You can either do it on your browser, take out your phone. You're going to go to the website menti.com, and then you're going to put in this 8-digit code when you're prompted. 20471853. Very good. Figured it out. Go in and then let us know so that we can see who's here and why. And the people who are writing other, you're also welcome to drop in the chat what the other is so that we have some sense. Onboarding meaning starting a new position. Yes, exactly, Erica. Yeah. Meaning it's a new company. You were hired somewhere new. Promotion means internally. That's what I meant. All right. I'm very curious about all the others. So anyone who wants to put into the chat in Zoom, what brings you? Other equals improving my corporate board service, new entrepreneurial endeavor. Fabulous. Yvette, Catherine. Onboarding others. Ha. Yes. If that's a part of it, if you're hiring and onboarding others. So I will say that keeping in mind that we're talking about that there's context and there are goals, we're lucky to be all together working towards a world in which there's not just one form of what leadership looks like and what leadership sounds like and what leadership dresses like, and that we can all be bringing ourselves and that intentional and authentic versions into the work that we're doing. And this is a part of it. Throughout this whole conversation today, I want it to be really clear that I am not here to tell anyone what's the right or the wrong way to do any of this. It's more about whether you are speaking and acting in a way that serves your goals, be it for the particular conversation you're in a conversation with someone who's on your team and you're getting to know each other, or you're interviewing and you're making an impression because you want them to hire you, right? Those are goals for the specific moment that you're in. It connects into a bigger picture, but it's not necessarily that that there's a right way and a wrong way. And that's really, really important for me to say, because we're moving away from that. We're moving away from everyone listen, I have the answers and you're all going to hear me, both in terms of you right now in this webinar and also in leadership more generally. Let's see, Audrey writes here, mentoring others and improving my leadership skills, trying to decide whether or not to accept presidency of a nonprofit board. It's a good question, an exciting opportunity. I put onboarding, but in reality, I'm 6 months into a new position as co-director. Right. So in that sense, if it's, I'm not talking about from yesterday to today, but also a bigger picture. Presenting myself as an independent arts professional with no institutional affiliation as a consultant. Great. So getting this picture, thank you for those of you who have jumped in and shared. Everything that we'll be talking about today is that I want you to be able to make choices that fit into your context and your goals. So what's on our agenda for today? We'll be going through 5 different domains of projecting leadership with intention from day 1. And we'll be going through them one by one. Again, you're welcome to put questions into the chat. And Dana and Becky and Dustin, if you see questions and I've missed them because things are scrolling by, you're welcome to also ping me or just take yourself off chat and let me know. And also please, anyone who would like to take yourself off of mute and interrupt and ask questions. Let's make it feel like a conversation. That's totally fine. So we'll be talking about values, articulating values, having values be a part of what it is that being a part of our active vocabulary at work, listening skills, question skills, sharing insights in strategic ways as you're settling in to new work, and blending your style. We'll get to the nonverbal stuff as well. Again, suggestions and based on what your goal is, not because there is a right and a wrong way. Let's start with speaking your values. When I think of leaders, I think of people who it's clear to them what their values are and also how it ties into the work that they're doing, the work that their organization is doing. Especially in a virtual environment, if you're starting in a new leadership role or you are looking to increase your expand your influence, and you're doing so not in a face-to-face capacity like many of us, I imagine, many of you, I imagine, are doing right now, nothing should be left unsaid. There could have been a time pre-COVID where you could just kind of pick up what's going on from the people around you, but we've been in this for 2 years now. And when we can speak these things out loud and say, teamwork is really important to me, bring an example, ask other people about their opinion about that value, then we are building the basis for culture. Culture is essentially behavioral manifestation of values, right? So if you want to be building a culture in that leadership role that you're in, doing so from that place of values will be extremely beneficial. You don't have to leave it up to people to guess, because otherwise people will be able to fill in all kinds of assumptions on their own. I have a nice little image here with all kinds of examples of values. And in a moment, I'll also ask people to share what are the values. Yes, Audrey, I agree with you. It is an inspiring list of aspirations that people have shared. And that is really, I completely agree with you about that. Let's think of some examples. Let's say you are interviewing and they ask you for an example of something where you learned something new, or a time where you grew, or a time that you failed, or whatever it is. Speaking values there could be bringing an example of a time in which you were able to get everyone on board because it's really important to you that everyone is united, right? That's saying that in the story, and then tying it in, going ahead and saying, when I come into this position, should you hire me for this role, getting people united will be a part of my my initiatives over the first few months there, to make sure that I'm listening, getting everyone. That is an example of saying something and then tying it in with examples of how you got there and how you want to use that going forward. Let's say you've been promoted. And this is something I often hear from my clients. I am now managing people who used to be my peers, and that's a big challenge. An advantage that you have working with people who you already are familiar with is that you might have a sense of what your shared values are. You and I both really, really care about this project succeeding. I know how dedicated you and I both are to the work that we do here. And then going on and saying whatever else it is after. Speaking it out loud is a way of making people know that you are grounded and the actions you're taking are grounded in things that are important to you and to the company or whatever it is. When you're onboarding and you're having all kinds of new conversations with the people on your team, for example, then anchoring your conversations, giving them examples from things that are important to you that you're bringing into this role, and asking them as well. You don't have to say, what are your values? You can say, tell me what's important to you, right? What are the things that are most important to you in terms of the way we work, or the way we will get to our outputs? You can ask people, what are the things that you really put your foot down about, right? Those are the kinds of questions that can elicit from people on your team as well. what are their values? So being the Wellesley community that we are, I'm going to open up another Menti to get, I skipped over, sorry, I skipped over the second question before. I am curious, what are the goals that bring you all here? So in the same Menti code that we had before, you can just keep that browser open. I'll drop it in here again. So we talked about the context. Oh, good, excellent. You're all there. All right, so we got a whole bunch of establishing rapport with my team. Seems to be of a lot of interest here. Fabulous. Some navigating cross-cultural politics, some establishing relationships with other stakeholders. Some people are using this because they're looking for jobs right now. Managing my small business and projecting leadership to them into clients and potential clients. Yes, definitely. When you are the owner. Great, wonderful. All right, now we're going to go, and I wanted to get everyone's leadership values. So this is a different code. It's the same website. So you go to menti.com and the code is 81741554. And this is a word cloud. So you're welcome to put in the values that are things that you want to be focusing on projecting and things that you want to be able to be speaking out loud and finding ways to make them explicit and part of what how people identify you as well. And I will say, as these come in, see that trust is really holding on to the center here. I want to challenge people to think, and you can also put into the chat, of examples of how you can speak these values. In what ways can you make sure that you're infusing your words and the way in which you're building that rapport within your team, or connecting with people who are across the leadership of your organization? What are ways in which you can speak out trust, speak out teamwork, competence, honesty, integrity? You can also take yourself off of mute and share if you'd like. I love seeing these examples as they come in here. That teamwork, trust, integrity, and competence have really stuck out. Stephanie says, be brave and ask for feedback. Fabulous. Yes, definitely. I think brave, I'll just say it, I don't have the link here, but you can look it up by just Googling it. Brene Brown has a great model for braving trust. So people who trust is a really important value for you. I have a sticky note here on my wall next to me. I'm not going to pull it off because I'm not sure I'll be able to stick it back on, but that trust actually has several different components to it. And so if you want to be focusing on trust specifically, then it's about setting boundaries and being reliable, accountability. And she has a really beautiful thing. So you can look up on Google, and if someone wants to do this and drop the link, she has like a PDF that'll come up. Someone can just do this. Braving Trust, Brene Brown. It's an acronym. Brene loves her acronyms. All right, so who else wants to give examples? Josephine says thoughtful listening, not listening to speak. Yes, we're going to get to that in a moment. I think that's a really important element here. Authenticity. Laura, you want to say another few words about that? You're welcome to.
This is Laura. I think this is a big one for me because it actually goes to what you were talking about at the beginning. You know, you can't pretend to be something that you're not. And so I think that feels like an important value to actually walk the talk, or and I think it engenders trust when you are authentic in your leadership.
Yes. Oh, And Destiny, thank you for dropping that in. Yes, I agree with you, Laura. I think that authenticity is really important. It's also, there can be a bit of a trap to authenticity, because people can sometimes say, well, I spoke my mind and then I got reprimanded for it, but I was being authentic, right? So there, on the one hand, there is an element of, if there are things that are important to you to put out there, no one else is saying them or no one else is pointing them out, you're going to be the person who's going to do it, knowing that you might get some flack for that. That is certainly a part of it. There is also an important balance of that authenticity within a context of what are the goals. If it's about consistency, then that is, what are the things that people are going to know they're going to get from me? No one likes an inconsistent boss, or they're going to show up and in one conversation you're really, really nice, and the next one you're like screaming your head off at them. No one wants that boss. Studies show that's the worst kind of manager, is one that is a Jekyll and Hyde situation. But yes, when it comes to authenticity, it is an important element of trust building, and something that's going to be a little bit different for everyone, because it also is about being grounded. It's about being grounded in these values. It's about being grounded in knowing who you are and the role and the value that you bring within the company. I'm gonna look and see what else is here. Integrity in scientific research. I mean, he says designing experiments well and reporting results honestly. Oh yeah, for sure. And honesty is exactly one of those examples of something that you can be talking about it and you can make it a part of the conversation of saying, it's really important to me. For example, I worked for a boss who would say, she had like a phrase she used all the time: report bad news early, right? That was one of her ways of making us know that honesty was really important to her. She did not want us to ever tell her that something was going well if it wasn't. She'd prefer to know that it wasn't, and that we'd be building a culture of honesty. And she never punished anyone for bringing up bad news quickly. So that ties into what you're saying there. Inclusive, actively reaching out to hear from team members you haven't heard from on a team decision. Yes, actively seeking out those who you notice are quiet, having that sensitivity. I don't know if sensitivity is on the board here, but certainly it ties into that. Inclusivity is kind of having a running track in your head of who are the people who are always going to speak first and who are the people who you haven't heard from. Anyone else want to take yourself off of mute and share an example, something that you're experiencing or you've gone through or that you're working on in this before we move on? All right.
I was going to say, strangely, one of the things that I found most motivating, I thought was stupid the first time I heard it, was having a boss say thank you. It's like, I'm just doing my job. Why are you saying thank you? And it makes all the difference in the world.
Carol, I'm so glad you said that. I'm going to read you a quote. It's on my phone. I'm sorry, I just got it. I use the Calm app to do meditations, and they have these like little quote cards at the end that you can download if you want. And so this morning I did one that was about gratitude, and the quote at the end was, "I would maintain that thanks are the highest form of thought, and that gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder." And I feel like that is exactly that. It's always free, right? And it always adds value. Saying thank you, count how many times you say thank you a day. Create a culture of thank you. Yes, if we could have one takeaway from today, it would be create a culture of thank you. As a leader, there could be nothing better. All right, let's go back to we've talked through values here. Let's go on to number 2, listening closely. I'm opening up. I want to see you all here, whoever's got your videos on at least. Raise your hand, my fellow Wellesley alums, those of you who are on video, if you have worked for a really amazing boss at some point. Who here's worked for a really amazing boss? Oh, look at all those hands up. Claire, your hand's not up. Just kidding.
And my own boss, does that count, Maya?
You work for the best boss, Claire, and that's you. So who here was that amazing boss? Keep your hand up if you would consider them to be a great listener. Yeah.
this is dreadful because it's very interactive and I just can't handle the interactive technology aspects.
Sorry.
Whether it's raising hands or doing polls, I just can't because it'll upset me.
Oh,
But I know I am.
sorry to hear that you're, I hope that you're able to absorb by listening.
57. And at least 2/3 are participating.
Okay.
That's what it is.
All right.
For the speaker, it becomes interesting for them because they get to see
All right.
Dana in real time and talk to it, and it just helps
Oh,
them.
So, in terms of being a good listener, what does it mean to be a good listener? What are the ways in which, I see people are also using the hand raise mode. Love that. Being a good listener is about more than just using your ears, and it's more than just words, nonverbal communication, right? Like it's deeper than that. Listening uses your ears, but listening closely, or what I also describe as listening in Technicolor, is about engaging your head and your heart as well. It's about having focus on what the person's saying, not thinking about all the other things that are going on. It's about curiosity. It's about openness. And that is an important balance to have, with also the ability to be strategic and be thinking ahead and to have a sense of where the conversation's going, where you want it to be going, but to hear what the person's saying and to be able to, with a lot of curiosity, say, tell me more. Right? To be able to do that in a conversation is an incredibly important part of leadership, whether you are managing people or whether it's with your peers. In terms of reflecting back, reflecting is, and that meaning words coming out of your mouth, is essentially the only way for people to know that you really heard them. You could have a presence where you are really nodding a lot and like saying, yeah. But for people to really know that you hear them, you're also going to have to use your words back. Here are a few examples. Sometimes we actually want to use people's exact words, like let's say people use a lot of sports analogies, for example, or a lot of weather analogies, or a lot of whatever. Using that kind of language back with them, meeting them where they are, can be really helpful. But also knowing when it's important to do some reframing instead. For example, instead of having someone saying, "Oh, this is really hard," it's okay to say, "I know that it's really. It sounds like this is challenging for you." Right? I think an important thing about reframing, I do want to emphasize that, is adding "for you" at the end is a way to separate the agreeing with them from acknowledging that you're hearing that that's what's going on for them. So yeah, that's really hard is different from, I get that it's hard for you, right? That's a nuance that can make a big difference, because sometimes it's not hard and that person's just struggling with something. So being able to just remember to put "for you" at the end of it is a way to be there with them without sometimes getting wrapped up. Sometimes it could be about politics. Sometimes someone comes to vent about someone else, right? And it's that's an important lesson, is to be able to acknowledge that that's what's going on for that person without agreeing with them, but that's really what is happening, because there's always an element of subjectivity. I do see that there's a question that came in, so I'll respond to it in a second. Being able to summarize, someone has, you have a new member of your team, or you've joined and you're sitting with each member of the team one by one, and they're giving you all the background and telling you all the stuff, and to be able to, in one sentence, say back to them, okay, so what I'm hearing is that our number one priority right now is to get that product launched in the next 6 months. Did I understand that correctly? They've just spoken for 4 minutes and you've said it back in one sentence. I'll be like, yeah, exactly, right? So that is an important summarizing tool, to be able to actually say those things back. It's so different than just saying like, yeah, I got it, right? And especially if you're going to cut someone off and just be like, I got it, right? There's nothing that shuts people down more than they're in the middle of getting something off their chest and you just cut them off and say, I got it, right? To be able to say, I hear that right now, this is something that's a real struggle for you. It sounds like the challenges are A, B, and C. Am I getting that? Sometimes when someone comes and they share something that's uncomfortable or hard, and especially let's go back to the example of honesty that came up in the values. This is also a great opportunity to speak the values in that listening. If you hear a value in something that someone's saying, I really appreciate your honesty and sharing your candid explanation of what you think is going on here, right? That's a way to foster that in other people as well, to have them meet you where you are. What's a good way to communicate how important teamwork is, not needing to do everything yourself? That's a great question. So I'm going to come to that in a moment also in I think it's on my next slide, but I'll answer it quickly now. One thing that I find is important when it comes to fostering teamwork is giving credit, right? So if you want to be encouraging people to be, it depends what you mean by teamwork. If it's about encouraging people to speak with one another, to share information, to be transparent, for example, if that's what you're referring to, then pointing it out when you see it, right? Like, Yamini, I saw that you and Sarah were sharing that information and you opened a shared file and we're working on it. I'm really happy to see that, right? When you see it, acknowledge it, thank for that. Let's think of something else within teamwork that's about transparency, about people collaborating in order to work on a project. Acknowledging, let's say you're presenting the strategy and it's on behalf of your team, saying, I saw that, Robert and Marissa and Keisha were working on that together, and the three of them together brought this to me, so I want to acknowledge them and thank them for that. Yamini, am I in the right direction? Are those helpful? You can just give me a thumb up or a yes or a something in the chat if I've answered your question or if you want more. Great. All right. I want to say one other thing about listening and energy before we move on, and that is commenting about energy. Okay, there are a lot of nonverbal things that happen. I'm sure some of you have been in conversations with people where you see them kind of shrinking back and kind of like, now it could be that they're cold, right? But also, if you've said something that's upsetting and you see them kind of shrinking in, or the opposite, you ask a question, someone really lights up, acknowledging that energy shift is a great way to get people to feel like you're really with them and you're really focused. To say, like, I see from the way you're kind of hunched in right now that there's something that I said that made you uncomfortable. Do you want to respond in some kind of a way, right? Or you ask a question, someone like lights up and be like, I could tell from your smile that we're in the right direction, right? Acknowledging those things, especially on Zoom, just to make people feel like you're part of, that you're sitting, it closes the gap. Brene Brown says that effective communication is the unpredictable and uncontrollable art of connection. And whatever we can do to be fostering that connection, especially over Zoom, so important. Any questions about listening before I go on to question asking? Any questions before I go to questions? All right. Let's talk about powerful questions. We've talked about speaking values. We've seen some examples also in how we listen actively and respond to people. Luckily, we're at the end of an era. I hope we're at the end of an era. I'm helping to foster the end of an era, and I invite you all to be with me, where leaders are supposed to have all the answers, and instead moving to a world in which leaders have really good questions. I do, coaching skills for managers and help people get into this mode. It's incredibly important to me that sometimes leaders, yes, do need to actually have the answers, but that it comes after thorough question asking and bringing in opinions and connecting dots. When you're a leader who asks good questions, you are also indicating that you are a critical thinker, also that you value other people's opinions and their inputs, going back to the teamwork comment before, that you're creative, that you can connect the dots. So what do I mean by that? Let's give some examples here of the kinds of questions that are in the category of powerful questions. Connection to the bigger picture. Let's say you're sitting with a new team member, and let's say you're onboarding and you're starting in a new position. So you're learning a lot about the company and you have to be absorbing a lot of information. Acknowledging that you're in question asking mode, listening in question asking mode for the first however long it is, depending on the context of the company. Are they in a big crisis and they have hired you to just fix things right now? Or do you have some more time to be gathering information before coming up with opinions about things. What's the connection to the bigger picture? Someone is telling you about a specific initiative or what happened to their department. Ask them, how is this connected to other things that are going on in the organization? You can ask about impact. Okay, this initiative, how is this, what's the projected impact, or what's the impact you've seen up until now of this? You can ask about it in terms of trade-offs and resources. What are the resources that go into this? Who's on it? How much time do they spend in it? What's a budget for this? Trade-offs. What are the other things we're not doing because we're focused on this? Or what are the things that we're not focused on because we're focused on, what are the things are there things that we're not doing that you'd want to be doing? But those are questions that can really elicit, before you've drawn any conclusions yourself, asking these kinds of questions. If you're in interview mode as well, there will come a point at which you're asked if you have any questions, and being prepared with a few good ones, a few strategic related questions. What are the things that you see as being the most important challenges coming up in the next few years? Those are the kinds of questions that can also indicate that you are that critical thinker and that you are creative and that you are focused on gathering data before drawing conclusions. With team members who might be struggling with prioritizing, asking about important versus urgent will make a difference. So for example, someone comes and you're getting the sense that people are putting out a lot of fires, right? There's a lot of hero action around about fixing things that are going wrong. And if you start to notice, you might see that people are not meaning to, but generating crises in order to be able to put them out, right? To be able to start to put the language in of how is this connected into the bigger picture? Where is this in our longer term strategy? As opposed to, how much energy is going into this right now versus the benefits that we're seeing from it. Something that I've learned also from other contexts that I've been in Wellesley forums about microaggressions and about creating inclusive environments, asking the question, what do you mean? Sometimes people say things and they're insensitive, and it happens. And coming to it from that place of curiosity of what do you mean, sometimes just gets the person to realize that they said something that isn't appropriate. And also they could explain themselves and you realize that you interpreted it in some way, and you can open up a conversation about that. So that's something I've also learned from other Wellesley alumni fora that I'm sharing here as well. And I love the what if questions, imaginative questions. There's a time and a place for these, and if you're in a leadership role, there is also an expectation of being able to bring in that creativity and that bigger picture and be able to say, what if we did it like this? Or have we considered doing it like that? And sometimes people will be like, yeah, we tried that 3 years ago and it didn't work. And sometimes people will say, oh, we haven't thought about that, and we can explore it more. Questions about questions. Need more water in my cup. All right. We're speaking our values, we're listening actively, we're asking good questions. And yes, there comes a time in which part of your leadership is to be also sharing the thoughts on your mind, the strategies that you're putting together, the conclusions that you're drawing from the things that you are gathering. A few specific aspects of sharing insights strategically include connecting the dots. Being able to say, I heard in this meeting from this person, and in that meeting from that person, and I'm seeing that there's a pattern, right? I'm noticing that there's finding out, are those two people working together? Do they know that other people are working on similar things? Do you see things that are coming down the line that could crash into each other in the future? Two humongous deadlines that are both set for the same time of year when they might not need to be, right? There are different things where you can share those insights and say, I'm noticing that, whatever it might be. Referencing materials, this goes back to what I was saying about the, Julie, I see your question, I'll get back to it. Referencing materials, this connects also what I was saying about teamwork. There are a few different aspects of this. Part of it is, like I said, referencing people who have given you stuff and offering that appreciation for people who have given you briefings on certain things or sent you materials that were really valuable, wrote briefs for you to explain things. They were written in clear ways. They were written that you could understand them easily, whatever it might be, any form of acknowledgement, and then drawing on that material to be able to be bringing those things together. And it connects also into showing your work of not just coming and saying, here is what I think we should be doing, but to explain your reasoning, explain the projected impact that you think will come from it. All of that together is not just about, if you have been listening and you've been asking questions, people will also be really happy to hear those insights. They'll want to know what you're thinking when you pull it all together, especially if you include in that referencing of the people who helped you get there. Julia's question, how do you know if you're asking too many questions? Ask people for feedback. First of all, you can read the room a bit, right? There's a time and a place. You can see that a meeting's drawing to an end and it's not the time to ask a humongous question. It's going to keep everyone there for an extra 15 minutes if people are focusing on timeliness. You can say, I have another question. Do you mind if I follow up with you about it afterwards, right? Or something like that. Getting a sense of how many questions other people are asking. You might not want to be doubling the amount of questions that other people are asking, but you might want to be upping your, one or two more, whatever it is. You can also tell by the answers that you're getting. If you're getting shut down in the answers that you're getting, it might be time to take a little bit of a break and find another forum. Catherine asks, how do you phrase the important versus urgent question? So the important versus urgent, if you're not familiar with there's 4 quadrants. I'm not going to start drawing on a whiteboard now, but you can imagine one is important, not important, and the other is urgent, not urgent. Okay, so you have 4 quadrants. One is important and urgent. People's focus got to be there. One is not important, not urgent. People's focus does not need to be there. And people often get stuck in the other 2 things that are, people spend a lot of time on urgent but not important tasks. And often strategy is in important but not urgent. So that's a really quick summary of that concept. And as a leader, you're often going to want to be pulling your focus into important but not urgent and keeping other people's focus, being discerning about the urgent but not important stuff that they might be putting out a lot of fires that they don't need to be. And so asking people, how urgent is this? Or how important is this? What's the deadline on this? Who's needing it? What's going to be impacted if we don't do it? So the deadline's Friday. What happens if we do it by Monday? Like, there are other things that we have to get to that we're not getting to, right? What are the trade-offs? Is that helpful, Catherine? All right. So our 5th and final topic, getting to the nonverbal parts of all of this. So far, I've been talking a lot about talking. We haven't talked so much about what it looks like and what it sounds like. So this article here, I'm gonna encourage everyone to look up on Harvard Business Review, this article, to develop your leadership style. If you Google that, you'll find the link to this article. Came out in the November-December magazine of last year, like more than a year ago at this point, not last month. Fabulous article. The 3 authors of the article have a cumulative like 12,000 executives that they had worked with. And this quote was, I think it's like the last line of the article, but I feel like it summarizes this concept of coming for a blended leadership presence. They talk about a spectrum. It's not up down. One's not better than the other. It could be done in either direction of the horizontal axis of powerful on one side and attractive on the other. In a second, I'll show you the chart. I'll pull it up. But this concept of having a blended leadership presence is about versatility. It's not saying that one is good and one is bad. But if you are way over and you're constantly in the powerful side, and I'll show you so it's not totally up in the air, right? If you're on the left side of these columns here, it was long like this, but I had to cut it so that I could get it on the landscape screen. if you're way over there and you spend all your time over there, people will see you as rude and aggressive and abrasive and whatever, and you spend all your time over on the attractive side, and you only ask questions, you only speak softly, and your head is always leaned over to the side, and you never, ever, ever use any of the powerful, then people will assume that you're a pushover and, that you are not someone whose opinion should be taken seriously. And a blended leadership style is the ability to read the room and be able to toggle, spend most of your time somewhere in the middle, being able to know, that everyone has a comfortable place. If I were to ask everyone to make a list right now, and you're welcome to do so, write down the ones that are really obvious for you that you do, and a few that you wish that you could also work on because you feel like they could help with that blend. Okay, I really highly recommend picking one or two and saying, this month I'm going to work on my lean, right? If I'm let's think of one that's like an easy one to talk about here. Louder versus softer, right? That if you are a person who typically speaks really softly, it could be good to practice not everything else, just being louder, right? For a little while and see how that feels. There's a point of experimenting here, of being willing to try things out, to find what is the place where you feel most comfortable, kind of at a baseline, and what are the ways in which you want to take one or two in this direction, one or two in that direction, in order to help serve your goals, right? This isn't a judgment call of what's good or bad. It's not a judgment call of what you should always be. Is that you're coming into a meeting with your manager, your boss, the chair of your board, whoever it might be, coming into an interview, and what are the ways in which you want to be carrying yourself in order to serve the purpose of your meeting. Sometimes that will be that you are really in listening mode. And sometimes you're in high engagement, sharing a lot of thoughts and opinions mode. Thank you, Destiny, for putting that in the chat. So I also do want to mention that there are cultural differences to be taken into account. This is not a be all and end all. I come from a culture, high interruptions, high intensity. People lean to the powerful side, and I do a lot of cultural communication work to help people get more comfortable taking that step back and still seeing themselves as a leader without constantly jumping in over everyone else's words. There are elements here, certainly. Eye contact is one that in certain countries, eye contact is considered rude, and in other countries, eye contact is considered a form of power. So, that is something that I also feel like I need to mention, is that, but I do think that this is as a map, as like a guidebook of sorts, can be helpful. Do people want to, I'm going to invite people to write into the chat. We're coming towards the end, so we're going to start to summarize, but I'd love for people to share if there's something here that they feel they want to work on in a context, right? It's like, as I work on establishing rapport with my team, I'm going to work on asking more questions. Or as I build relationships with external stakeholders, I'm gonna dress more formally. I don't know. I'm just looking at the options here of what might be things that people would want to connect with. Welcome to put in the chat. You're welcome to take yourself off mute and share. I would love for people to share something that they want to work on. I see from those of you with your cameras on, it looks like you're thinking. I see thinking wheels turning. Ask more questions. Thank you, Lauren. All right, let's see if other people have a few more. As I work on my executive presence, I'm going to work on stepping back and letting others ask more questions. Okay, right. And also, if you're the kind of person who leans heavily on asking a lot of questions, then also every now and then making a declarative statement in the other direction, Julia, of being able to say, I think we should go in this direction, or I'm seeing this pattern, right? To make more statements as well. it's so you can try that out and see whether it, if it adds anything. I see a few more coming in. Let's see. Jessica, as I start teaching adult students from various parts of the world, I want to work on soliciting feedback from them in different kinds of ways. I'm not just calling on folks in the classroom setting. Okay, good. So having different kinds of ways of soliciting that feedback, definitely. Some people, especially if it's around the world, some people might feel more comfortable sending you an email after. Some people might feel more comfortable if you check in with them. There's definitely a cultural aspect of getting feedback. Some people come from deferential societies in which they don't share an opinion unless they're asked, and otherwise. If your person falls more on the attractive category, what are the important best qualities to develop from the powerful category? I would certainly say that it depends on the context. I would say that it depends on what are the places, and it comes back to Laura's point before about authenticity. I want everyone who's on the call here to be able to think of one or two that they feel like they can, I'm going to go here for a second, experiment with. I'll come back, but it's okay to pick one or two. I don't think that I could pick from this whole list and say, if you were to have more abrupt topic shifts, you would feel more, you certainly would be coming across more in that powerful category. If someone's talking about something and you're like, I think it's time for us to move on, right? Saying that kind of thing, if you are driving a meeting forward and you tend to let the meetings go for too long because you feel bad cutting people off, being able to keep your eye on the time and say, you know what, this conversation can continue afterwards. It's time for us to move on to the next topic. Try that and see how it feels, right?
Maya, we have another question about, someone's asking about the challenges of connecting non-verbally over Zoom.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad that there are so many comments coming in. I'm not going to read them all out, but I encourage you all to see from each other. Yes, Kathy says, can you talk about the challenge of connecting non-verbally over Zoom? Absolutely. First of all, I encourage you to open up a Zoom with one person who you trust, like not in a meeting, a partner, your closest friend at work, roommate, whoever it might be, and practice with them. Where is the point on the screen where it feels like you're making eye contact, and get comfortable being able to look back and forth between looking at their face and looking back up at that area. So that's one thing, that eye contact is really challenging over Zoom, but I find that I have a general area on my screen here where I keep my eyes, even if I'm listening to someone speaking, I might look over at them to make sure they're not like welling up with tears or something, and I'll keep my eye focused to help me giving the impression that I'm really listening to them, listening and kind of, as opposed to doing other things. If I'm listening to you and I'm doing this, you're in that powerful mode here of inattentiveness, right? Ignoring others, wandering eyes, right? And also there's the one about the averted eyes while listening, the nonverbal style over there, right? So one of those is that. Another is that I do a lot of nodding on Zoom, and people sometimes will comment to me about that. It's because I want people to know that I'm really listening, and to take out of their mind the idea that maybe my screen has frozen and I'm just like staring like this. Carol says, your list makes me realize I'm on the attractive side. Balancing that with power would significantly improve my leadership. Yeah, it's exactly. And it's not about going all the way over there. There are times at which the stuff in the attractive category that you do, Carol, are helpful and they are appropriate for the situations, but just moving over a few notches every now and then, you can see good change. Can you provide the lists in the blended leadership slide? So blended leadership, and I think if I understand your question, Catherine, is about being able to go back and forth between these. It's not that there's a third list. It's about knowing that you're going to be hanging out somewhere in the middle and not, I know that we're kind of towards the end of time. So I'm just going to summarize here. We're absolutely at the end, and I appreciate all the questions that have been coming in throughout, and I'm happy to stand for a few extra minutes. If you bring all of this together, we're focused on that intention, about projecting your leadership style with intention from the beginning. Whether you are just making a first impression or you're building credibility, all of these things should be ongoing. It's a process. And at the end of the day, the goal is to be able to live those values in a way that will have people come along with you, right? That powerful enough to be heard and attractive enough to be followed. that we are finding that place in which people take our opinions seriously, take our insights seriously, and also want to go with us wherever we're taking them. So I really want to thank you all. I have a survey I'm going to post here, and as people are asking questions, sorry, let me just drop this in the chat. I would love for people to give me some feedback. I love feedback. Feedback's helpful for me in getting a sense, and it's also a way to stay in touch. And it'll also get sent out to everyone afterwards. I want to thank again Dana and Becky for inviting me. The blended leadership slide. Yes, that's the.
And Maya, we want to thank you very much for taking the time and energy to share your insights and expertise with our Wellesley community. That was just really thought-provoking, and your discussion was, I found, very concrete. And sometimes leadership can be, feel a little bit fuzzy. So thank you for that, and the very concrete discussions. We have a lot of fantastic comments, and I can appreciate that everyone's been so engaged. That's been wonderful. There are a couple more questions.
I'm here.
In the midst, one person says, I've been working on speaking more slowly, but I feel like it can sometimes lose people, especially those who aren't used to listening well. Do you have any thoughts on this?
So speed is one of about 6 elements of keeping people engaged while you're speaking. Another is the tone of your voice. So you can be speaking at a slow pace, but if you're indicating to people that right now is a really important thing that you're saying, and at other points you want to get people's attention in some other kind of a way, right? That there are other aspects that can be helpful. Also staccato, right? So sometimes you want to have a more fluid tone to your voice, and sometimes being really clear that the thing I'm saying has meaning, right? That it doesn't have to be only about speed. Sometimes you say things that's really exciting and you want to be really, but sometimes also slowing down can really get people's attention, especially if you get really quiet.
Very helpful. Okay. Thank you. I'm looking to see if there's any last questions in here.
People are also welcome to take yourselves off mute, put your cameras on. If you have more questions, more things you want to cover. I apologize if I missed any questions in the chat.
I think not. Several people have been interested in the slide with the attractive and powerful, and maybe we can send that out when we send out the recording. So
we'll send the recording, we'll send the slides to everyone, and anyone who's on the call who's in new management position right now. I'm opening group coaching for new managers in addition to the one-on-one coaching that I do with executives and otherwise. And these kinds of presentations and others for your companies, your organizations, more than happy to be in touch about any of that. It's in the survey that I put out. You're welcome to be in touch. I'm going to drop the link for the survey. And again, please, 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 it's very helpful to me.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your taking the time. We appreciate your involvement, your asking questions, your sharing what you're working on in your own personal leadership journeys. And Maya, it is just wonderful to meet and work with another Wellesley alumna. Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.
My pleasure. There's my email if anyone missed it before. Happy to be in touch, and thank you all again.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you.